Weapons, the latest horror film from Barbarian director Zach Cregger, is making a killing at the box office. Such a killing, in fact, that it's grossed over $70 million globally. That's a lot of cheddar. And yeah, continuing the overall hot streak that horror has had in 2025 and making it spooky year. We can forget about spooky season now, we've taken over. But what about Weapons specifically has had everyone rushing to the cinema to go and watch it, apart from the obvious fact being that, you know, it's really good. I'm Ewan, thanks for tuning to What Culture Horror, and yeah, let's dive into why Weapons has found such a big audience. Obviously without spoilers, because I ain't spoiling that movie for anyone. So as I said before, 2025 has been an amazing year for horror. We kicked things off with Oz Perkins' The Monkey, following Longlegs from last year. We've had 28 Years Later. We've had Ryan Coogler's Sinners, which obviously is an action horror hybrid, but is still an original horror concept. Final Destination Bloodlines came along and made millions and millions at the box office. And now we've also had smaller stuff like Bring Her Back, and I would also expect Dave Franco and Alison Brie together to gather pace as it chugs along at the box office. And now we have Weapons, which in itself is just really, really great to see doing so well, because while I didn't particularly care for Barbarian overall, I kind of thought the original premise the movie had going for it was a lot scarier than the droopily, gooply, dangly, gangly thing that it ended up becoming. Yeah, it's just the kind of horror movie that I want to see doing well, and it's great that it's resonating with so many people, especially when there are a lot of movies in cinemas right now, and the biggest loser from Weapons' success is actually Marvel. We now have horror franchises going toe-to-toe with Disney and coming out on top, which I think we can all agree is pretty cool. While the exact minutiae of the data from Weapons' box office success hasn't been made fully clear yet, The Hollywood Reporter did note as well that it's actually been doing well in Latin America and Europe, which is good because those two markets have historically been quite genre resistant. They tend to gravitate towards non-horror offerings more so than spooky movies, which again, it's great that Weapons seems to be having that pull and intriguing more than just the genre faithful. And I also think that Weapons' success kind of signals a wider shift in terms of audience interests. While big franchises like Superman and Fantastic Four have been able to generate big numbers, especially in the case of the former and less so in the latter, generally speaking, I think audiences are gravitating more towards buzzy, individual, and quote-unquote original projects now than they are the traditional IPs, which, particularly in the case of superheroes, has led to a bit of a fatigue. Yeah, we can say that Superman has bucked that trend, and it definitely has, by being good, but overall, there's still a little bit of a hangover from that post-COVID superhero kind of glut where everything was being thrown at the canvas and not much was sticking. There have been anomalies. Obviously, last year we had Deadpool and Wolverine 2, but by and large, I think audiences are coming to depend less upon the big franchise IPs and are looking towards a broader palette in terms of their cinematic tastes, which is just great to see. Again, that's purely like anecdotal and just observational because it's just a general conversation I think a lot of people have been having. But yeah, I think overall, more and more people are opening horror into their hearts because, yeah, it's great. Why wouldn't they? We love horror. And again, obviously, one thing that's always going to put a film on a good footing to generate a lot of money at the box office is a strong critical reception, which Weapons obviously received. It also got really positive early audience buzz in the same way that last year's Longlegs did, albeit without over-relying on this movie will make you cry and scream and die in a cinema routine, which again, I like Longlegs, but it was not the scariest thing ever made, let's be real. But there's also the fact that Cregger's reputation, even though he hasn't done that many films, Barbarian was such a unique offering that I'm willing to bet that people went into this one expecting a similar kind of conceit where the full scope of the movie is masked by the trailers and something else gets thrown in, a big curveball, which again, if you add that that immediacy, that urgency, the FOMO, the want to not be spoiled, that in itself is also going to bring people to your movie. So yeah, Cregger's got a really cool, unique kind of gimmick. Gimmick makes it sound negative, but he's got a unique into the horror genre here that is clearly resonating with people beyond just the genre hardcore. And Weapons, like Longlegs before it, had brilliant marketing. It really leaned into the mystery, the abstract imagery that Cregger was creating on the movie, and that in itself is so refreshing because in an age where Hollywood marketing loves to overexpose, overindulge, oversell us on every little minute detail of a film, it's great that they were able to keep things relatively obscured. And that in itself is always going to be a more effective strategy than just laying all of your cards out on the table to begin with, especially when you factor in the reputation that Barbarian accrued after its release in like 2022. There's also a potential appeal in that subversive streak in the same way that I would say that Stephen King's writing appeals to large swaths of people. You have this suburban slice of Americana as the kind of background and canvas for Cregger to weave his weirdly horror-y story around. And that in itself, I think, kind of invokes imagery that we would call Spielbergian. There's an inherent appeal to having horror taking place in those settings and spaces that feel kind of incongruous. And I think that in itself is something we can't underestimate here. It's why movies like Poltergeist obviously did amazing back in the day too. So I think that's probably a big element to why this is resonating on a wider level. And also, again, can't be, forgetting Josh Brolin is in the movie, a really cool name actor that, yeah, lends further prestige to the film. Not that it needed any extra prestige, but yeah, I'm always gonna be happy to see Josh Brolin show up in something because that dude rocks. And yeah, in a year where horror has come out on top and superhero fiction has kind of fallen to the wayside, with the exception obviously being Superman, people went to the cinema this weekend and decided, you know what? I don't really care about Fantastic Four. I'm gonna go watch Weapons. And that, to me, is just really cool because it speaks to a healthier industry. Obviously, ignoring all the terrifying carnage that's going on with like AI and franchise stuff and all that sort of stuff, but by and large, 2025, really good year for the movies, and it's just great to see Weapons doing well because when a film like Weapons does well, we all win. And I think this is a lesson that Hollywood is going to continue to heed because horror historically has always been the home of the low-budget mega hit. You go back all the way to the 70s with Halloween, which was made in a budget of like a packet of Quavers and a Freddo pre-inflation and made millions. It's just going to continue to be that way, and when budgets for other genres keep ballooning, the likes of your Mission Impossibles and your Indiana Joneses, horror is going to be something that provides stability. And given it's a genre that enables more of a creative, risk-taking approach where you can be subversive, you can tap into contemporary thematics in a way that might make a more, let's just say, less freewheeling studio executive a little bit anxious, horror is there to do that. And yeah, and again, not to Marvel bash too heavily here because I don't want to make Pedro Pascal sad because he's wonderful. It's just nice that Weapons was able to go toe-to-toe with a movie of Fantastic Four size and take a really significant chunk out of its ongoing box office experience. I don't expect Weapons to match the overall total gross of something like a Fantastic Four, given that obviously FF is like a family picture. But at the same time, it's just great that it's been able to come in there and really kind of show that audiences are hungry for this kind of movie, which again is just really excited, makes my little horror guy heart sing. So yeah, well done Weapons. It's really cool. But I want to know what you all think of Weapons' box office success story down in the comments below. Did you go and see it? If you haven't, why haven't you already? And has all the buzz actually convinced you to go and do that? Probably this week. Preferably this week, in fact. Either way, I've been Ewan. This is What Culture Horror. Drop a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more, and I will see you next time. after I do the weapons run.